Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're celebrating our 150th episode of the podcast. Tonight, we'll discuss how family and board gaming often go together. Joining me for this milestone is our producer, Mike Bruner, and his brother, Randall, and my brother, Adam. Gentlemen, welcome to the binge. How you doing? Don't all talk at once. I know for a fact that none of you guys are quiet people. So let's just, I know we don't want to talk over top of each other, but it's, I got to tell you, this is just awesome. Let me start off with Mike. Mike, 150 episodes, man. If you go back to when we started this podcast, I guess almost 2 years ago now, I think at that time I was thinking in my head, if I ever got to 100 episodes, that'd be pretty huge. But, at 150 already, and for me, I feel like we're not even kind of halfway into it, right? I feel like we got a lot of runway still to go.
Yeah, it was, when I first volunteered to get you a couple guests, it was, just something, and here we are, 150 in, and it's amazing how many new creators we come across, and there's always new content to be made. So it's a fun process to watch and to be a part of.
Yeah, no doubt. I would say that, thankfully we connected, quite frankly, because you had a very wide network, way wider than I could have possibly imagined. And it was very gracious of you to agree to help with the podcast, because I don't think we'd be where we are today with the caliber of guests we've had if you hadn't been part of that journey. So I want to thank you for that, quite frankly. It's been cool with all the people we've met, right? We've made a lot of friends in the industry already. I can see Eric Furston already in our chat area there. Hey, Eric, good to see you joining us. Wishing us congratulations on 150 as one of our prior guests. It's just been so awesome. And this is why we wanted to take this episode and make this an episode about family. I think, in the past, we've taken our kind of 50 episode milestones and used it as a way to reflect on, the prior episodes and talk about some of the content from those episodes and so forth. But you and I have one thing that's, other than board games, that's in common, is that we're both, part of families, and we've got siblings, and the fact that we are actually co-making games with our siblings, it's kind of ironic, right? The two of us on the same podcast are doing that. So that's why I invited Adam and Randall to come on and really kind of get into our collective histories of gaming with our families and how that's kind of guided us over the years. And even talk about some of the things we're doing right now to continue to stay connected and bonded together and so forth. Why don't we start? Randall, this is the first time you and I have met each other, and it's cool to kind of put a face to the name. Are you the older or younger brother of Mike?
I am the oldest.
You're the oldest. How many of you guys are there?
There are 5 of us all together, and we kept getting less and less good. They never matched me, so they just kind of had to stop at 5.
Nice. And Mike, are you the youngest by default, are you? Or
I'm the middle.
You're the middle. Nice.
He's all right.
Now, is this something like when you guys were younger, did you guys play a lot of games together? Or with 5 kids, you'd have quite the spread, I imagine, between the oldest and the youngest, right?
You answer that, Randall.
Yeah, we were born about, between me and the youngest, there's 9 years.
Okay.
And so we were close enough in age to be able to do things together. Mike kind of was the bridge between, the oldest and best to the youngest. And I feel like, as the oldest, things were always competitive. I remember playing games, and I would never, ever, ever want to lose. And so if I lost, I don't know if I was always a great loser or a great winner. But yeah, I feel like we played games pretty frequently in our youth.
Was it very competitive between you guys? So you obviously being the oldest would hate to lose. Mike, were you kind of in a similar boat? How did you react with your brothers when, the give and take of regular gameplay?
So I think a lot of the competitiveness comes with who's bigger. And when you're playing a game with 2 older brothers and they can pound you physically, then you're like, okay, I'll let you have this one or whatnot. Or eventually you get to a point where you can outrun them.
Yeah.
or at least I did. So, but we grew up in a competitive household. If we weren't playing board games, we were typically doing sports
Yeah.
year round, whether it be wrestling, basketball, soccer, football. It was always something. And so we were always wanting to win. And I think that just translated into, board games and life in general.
And so, would you say that, like Randall, being the older brother, was there an influence you had over your younger siblings in terms of board games? Like, who kind of introduced board games to the family? Was there always something there, like through your parents, or was there a key moment where you guys really got into heavier board game playing?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what introduced us to board games. I think it's one of those things where you see a board game and you think it looks awesome. Like I have 4-year-old boys, and we bought a board game, and all they want to do is play it. And by play it, that means they want to just take out the pieces and throw it everywhere. And so, I remember we had board games in the house, and everywhere we went, if we could find a board game, we'd want to play it. Like I remember playing Life at grandma's.
Yeah.
Frequently. Every time I went, I wanted to play Life. But I don't know. I feel like my influence on them, I feel like our parents actually influenced us the most. Mike mentioned that, we were competitive, and we also played a lot of sports. I remember that one time where we took on some kids at the school, and they were all older than us, but our competitive nature, I think, made us better at things like sports.
Yeah.
And so we took those kids to freaking school
Hmm.
in that football game we played against them. And at first they blamed it on the fact that it was flag football. And then we said, okay, we'll play tag with you guys. And we schooled them in that too. So I think that we made each other better. And, board games, you can only become so good. But yeah, I feel like there was a lot of elements of that.
Was there a lot of home brewing? Like when it came to games, did you guys hack games when you were younger? Did you kind of do your own rules, house rules, things like this?
I feel like we had house rules a lot, and mostly that was just misunderstandings of the rules.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Like in Life, I think we weren't allowed to take the route where you don't go to school. We always had to take the school education route, because I think our grandmother said, you're going to go to school, so you have to do that. Yeah, you have to go. So it had to be a life lesson type of game. So yeah,
you get the Sharpie out and you just kind of cross out that part of the board. Say, no, when you kids are playing, you're not going down this path.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Adam and I, we're 12 years apart, actually. So we have a big family as well. There's 5 siblings. Adam's the youngest. I'm in, I think, the second youngest, I guess, of that pack. But there's a gap between us, and I know for me, when Adam was probably in the younger years of board gaming, it was my way of being able to go and hang out with him and visit with the younger brother, right, and find kind of commonality, and that is something I think has been, kind of the spark that I think of in any game design that we do, is, how do you create something that's going to be an experience? And yes, I know some games can go really deep, and the word agency comes up a lot, and that's kind of a word that we don't like to use around your agency, right? A number of times I've heard that, but really it's the experience, right? Like, are people having fun doing this? Can the people have a conversation while they're playing, right? Can they socialize? Or is it too serious that, because I've seen games like that where no one is socialized. They're playing a board game, which is supposed to be the most social thing out there. And you observe the people, and no one's socializing because they're so focused on the game. They're too deep into the game itself where they're not pulling it back. And that's fine. Some people like games like that. For us, that's not the kind of games with our company that we wanted to create. Adam, would you agree with that? Or what's your thought growing up? I mean, you had the younger kind of perspective, right?
I agree. Like the game, for example, Tanks, it's a great point. The one you just were talking about was Tanks that you created when I was really, really young, something that we played a lot when you would visit from university. And that's one of our first games that you ended up creating and publishing, and kind of brought you into the publishing game and all of that stuff. So yeah, like Tanks was pretty simple to play. But I felt like being the younger brother, I wanted to always beat you at everything that we ever did. And I feel like you kind of wanted to beat me a little bit, considering I kind of stole your thunder, I guess, because you're the second youngest. So you're no longer the baby of the family anymore.
That's true.
So Tanks was like kind of like a take that kind of game. Um, so I know we would sometimes we'd start on the same side, and one of us would end up screwing the other one over while we were playing the game and trying to take the other one out. And it became about not winning the game, but just beating you or you beating me.
You know, that's a good
lot of the
point.
time.
And I think it's probably still like that, quite frankly, when you and
I
I
think so.
play. I mean, the one I can think of is we were at and I mean, kudos to you, Adam, because you're the one that I wouldn't be in this industry the way I am today if it wasn't for you. I mean, that is full stop. I mean, I created games 25 years ago, but they were mothballed, right? I moved on. And it was that time that I was at your house for game night and playing board games, and you started talking about Kickstarter, right? And gosh, you got all the skills. Why don't you do a Kickstarter? Why don't you get the tanks game? Let's put that on Kickstarter. And that's what really kind of fueled this whole thing. But a quick little story is we were at a game conference, and we're playing Tanks But No Thanks, and as a demo for people to come up and play. And you know, beforehand we discussed, you know, we're going to go easy just so people can kind of enjoy the experience and, you know, hopefully enjoy the game and maybe buy a copy. That lasted for like one game, right? And then every game after that is literally him coming gunning for me saying, I'm not going to take it, me gunning for him, and really two observers watching two other guys just battling it out in this that game. And
I don't know if they were observing. I was trying to use a lot of them as puppets to take you out, calling you the creator of the game. Like, this is the creator of the game. How good would it be to beat the creator of Tanks?
Yeah, there's a name we give Adam sometimes when we play it, and it's Geppetto. We call him Geppetto because he's the puppet master, right, when he's playing games. How about you guys, Randall, Mike? Like, you're the dynamic when you guys play and you're competitive. Have you found that your play style has evolved like now versus what it was even when you're younger? Or is there still some things that have kind of, you know, bleeding through?
I'd say for me, I've gotten, especially going through the Queen Bee process and demoing it at conventions and stuff, I feel like I've gotten less competitive or less about the win. Kind of a sentiment that you voiced or expressed earlier is this board game is just, you know, a catalyst for conversation or a shared memory. And so winning isn't necessarily the only goal. It's obviously one of the goals, but it's not the one and only for me now.
Yeah, I find that, and maybe it's because he's always introducing me to new games, but I find that Mike is frequently like the referee of the entire game, even when he's playing it. He just wants to make sure everybody's having fun. I feel like I'm a really polite player. I want to win, but I don't want to like beat you. I just want to accomplish victory in spite of you, kind of mentality. I don't know why I'm so polite in games. I don't.
Yeah, I'd say it's been humbling. And that's the one thing that I think developing and producing games, especially when you're publishing your own games, it's really helped me evolve and mature, I think, as a gamer. Right. You know, I used to go through for the jugular when I play games. Like, that was the only way I knew how to play. Right. Who's the strongest person that in this, you know, in this particular session? All right, I'm going to take them out. Right. And then I'm going to pick off the next person. It was all about the win. And, you know, what you realize is that you build friends not by dominating them in board games, but by having conversations during games. Right. And meetup groups was a big one for me on that. And I love going to meetup groups because I'm just there to socialize. If I win or lose, I could care less. You know what? I walk away with a smile on my face because I maybe made some new friends. There's a saying that Adam and I use often when we're playing board games where it starts getting too serious. Adam, you remember what that is? Hey, guys.
I'm always serious.
We're not curing cancer here, right? We're not curing cancer here. And it's true. Anytime you're playing a game and somebody starts getting really serious, like, really, are you sure you want to do that rule? And oh my God, you know, that's not, guys, we're not curing cancer, man. We're just playing a board game. It is an amazing way to disarm somebody when they start taking things a little too seriously. You know, as we've evolved in kind of this game development, at what point, Randall, did you and Mike kind of start working together on game development? Is this something relatively new, or have you worked on prior stuff in the past? Like, I know about the current project, but
you know, I had a couple ideas for board games that may or may not ever become a thing. They might not.
Your mic just cut out.
Yeah.
So let Mike continue that thought.
Yeah, I know he's worked on other games. There's one
Yeah.
in particular that he's showed me a little bit of called Manor. Are you back on, Rand?
Am I?
You're back.
Yep.
There you go.
I'll let you
Oh, okay.
finish your story.
Yeah. So, a couple that I may or may not, end up fulfilling. But he actually he's the one who kind of came and said, I've got this idea, and I've already got some people who in mind to be involved. But he brought me in because my gaming experience is board games, but also role playing games like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff.
Okay.
So he wanted somebody in there who could help kind of storify, make the game more of a story and like kind of give it a little bit of a role playing feel. And he felt that I might be able to help write it. And I write a lot. I kind of passed college because of my ability to write.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's kind of why he brought me in, and he brought others in as well. This is mostly his idea. He's the one that started it.
And you guys are in different states, right? So Mike, you're in Utah, I believe. And Randall, where are you located?
I actually just moved to Utah. I'm in my sister-in-law's living room right now, and the sun is going down, so it's becoming increasingly dark.
And how have you guys managed? Because again, when you're in different, just moved to the similar state now, but up until this point, you're having to do it remotely. Obviously, with COVID, has been an impact on that. How have you guys maintained, or how have you navigated the development of this game as you've gone along?
Yeah, so I'm kind of the lead developer on it, and kind of the game designer as far as the mechanics go. And then when I come up with an idea or a theme for an idea, I pass it on to Randall for the storytelling aspect of it, and then also run it by our artist who's been on the podcast, Sarah Keel.
That's great.
And say, hey, is this exciting to both of you to do this scenario? If not, what's another scenario that we can all be excited about? And so I play the game just about every week with Larissa or with some other play testers. And Randall, he's played it a lot less than that. Whenever we get together, we play it. But he knows the game well enough that he can do the story aspect of it. And yep.
Wait, this is a game?
Wait a second, I thought I was writing a story. So Randall, is it like a free flow, or like is there like guardrails you got, Mike, to say kind of this got to be contained in here, or is it kind of like, here's the idea, have at it, man? Like what's been their approach?
I try to limit myself. I'm trying to find a balance between having it very descriptive and immersive, without being overly wordy, because you don't want to read a novel every 3 seconds of the game.
Yeah.
So, but yet you want something that kind of evokes the imagination of, like, okay, right now you're in a jungle. It smells like this. It looks like this. It sounds like this. You want to be able to experience that in your mind, and you want everybody to be able to, kind of like in a role-playing game. So I try to find a balance between those two ends of the spectrum pulling me. So I think it usually ends up each encounter is usually about a healthy paragraph, I would say. Sometimes a little too healthy.
And then when you write it, is it kind of then go back over to the team, or how does it all get integrated? Like, are you guys using any kind of like shared drives and things like this, or is it everything just emailed? Like, how are you guys managing it?
Yeah, so we're using Google Drive for just about everything. We have a massive Google Doc that I think is over 100 pages now, and encounters. And so he'll type things out. When it gets to the mark that I want, I print it out, use it in playtesting, make adjustments to kind of the benefits or the rewards from that encounter, and then keep plugging away.
And Adam, with your style, and I know your style, but I want to hear you talk about it. I don't know if I've even asked you about when you're thinking of game design, right? Like, so we've done several games, and I know we've had a ton of debates in terms, quite frankly, in just a direction, right? To get the Tin Robot game should go with certain games. For you, what do you look for in game? Like, what's the core thing that you try to achieve when you're looking at game design?
When I'm looking at designing or helping designing, coming up with ideas, is basically I'm looking at from two different sides. On one being an adult, on what I like to play as an adult, but going back to when I was a kid on what I really thought was cool or neat and what I can blend the two sides of it. So we create a game where adults and kids can play together and like it, and it could become a family oriented game, or you could have two adults going at it and or a bunch of adults getting together and having a game night and really enjoying the game as well, or just having kids play it. So everybody, it involves everybody. And I think that for me is a key to developing games that captures a larger audience, so to speak, for across all the different ages, not just one gap.
One thing I think you're really good at that I've noticed in our collaborations is your ability to kind of connect the dots. Right. So there's been a number of times we've been working on a game concept where it's kind of mapped out and it's like, there's just something here that's not right. That's not clicking. And that seems to be one of your strengths is you're able to jump in and say, you know what, it's usually use the words, it'd be cool. It'd be cool. What if we did this, this, and this? And we look at it from this perspective, it might have this effect. And I think there's more times than I can count where we've had a game that's ready to go, and then you've come up with an idea that significantly enhances what we're working on, and allows us to pause and kind of go back and restructure things a little bit for a better game. And I think that's some of the accolades we've had in a lot of this recent titles we worked on has been some of those tweaks and nuances that we've kind of worked through together and that kind of back and forth. And I think that's what's kind of cool, in this brother themed episode is the ability to have a sounding board of someone to bounce something off of, someone that obviously you trust, right? That is there to, the exact same goals that you have. And that's just to have fun doing what you're doing. And then secondly, come up with a kind of a good end product. Is that something you guys find as well? Like, is there a lot of kind of sounding board efforts between the two of you? I'll let Mike answer because Randall's mic is gone. Randall knows he's just going to get absolutely ribbed now by Mike for the next week, right?
Yeah.
So I'll let him get his mic fixed. Mike, I'll let you answer.
So my first project that I developed, it was basically all me. And that was one of the things that as I developed the second project, I really wanted somebody else as a sounding board, as well as just a different skill set. Because I was able to do like graphic design but I wasn't a graphic designer. I was able to write the rule book, but I'm not a great writer. And so having other team members that, Randall's a great storyteller and he's a great writer. So why not use that when it was something that I wasn't good at and not necessarily looking forward to?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Randall. Yep. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. And, we do have complementing skills. Neither of us can draw. I can draw, and none of them have seen it, but I think I'm pretty good. But I think the thing about us is we don't really offend each other. We can come after each other's ideas and pick them apart without any hurt feelings or really getting attached to an idea too much. So I think it's been good.
And in your guys' relationship, in our project, it looks like we kind of have lanes that we're in. Randall's the storyteller. I'm kind of the mechanics guy. And you and Adam seem more like you're both doing the design, both doing the mechanics. Does that cause any problems for you guys as you co-design?
I don't know if it causes problems. I think a lot of our thought process we have a lot of similar interests.
Yeah.
I find more so than our other siblings.
Yeah.
Where a lot of our ideas and stuff kind of align a lot of the time. So we're able to, I find, bounce the idea off of each other and kind of feed off of that. So it kind of keeps snowballing when it comes to the game design or the rules. Like Jay was saying, he may have an idea and then he's like, I just can't put the two together. And I'll be like, well, it'd be cool. And I say that cool word because it's like, okay, I'm trying to plant the seed in his head to say, hey, that's your idea, man. Yeah. Like, look at it. Hey, that would be cool if we did this. I don't know. Do you think that's cool? And it just allows us to kind of keep talking about it and then bounce the ideas back and forth. until we kind of realize and come to a conclusion where we're like, I think we got something here. Like, let's try it out now. Let's just go for it and see how it plays out. And then sometimes we've played it out and we were like, that was just horrible. That was just an hour and a half, 2 hours wasted.
Yeah.
Let's scrap it and let's go back to the original idea and try to connect some other dots and see where we went wrong with that original idea. But I think it's just because we're very similar in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah.
Sure. And have you guys ever had a decision point where you're like, I really like this and you really like this. What are we going to put in the game?
Of course. And then we just put on boxing gloves and settle it, and the winner gets the rule.
Yeah.
All right.
You know what? I don't think we haven't actually. I think Adam nails it. I think of all the siblings, we have probably had the least, at least between myself, like my interaction with my other siblings versus my interaction with Adam. I'd say there's probably the least butting of heads I've had with Adam. Like, I can't think of any time we've even had like a blowout, quite frankly, ever. Yeah. Right. And I think it does. I think you're right. Like, we're both very much into sci-fi. We both like archaeology. We both like, space and science, and so we have a lot of similar interests that way. And we geek out of a lot of stuff, like movies. I mean, seeing tons of movies together and so forth. So there's very much a respectful back and forth where even if you don't like an idea, I could say, I don't really like that, right? I don't think that I think that'd be kind of crappier. I don't think I'd feel good about this. And there's no sense of anger. Like it's like, oh, okay, well, there's just an idea. And then likewise, I'll throw stuff, and you'd be like, nah, I don't think I like that. And it's very, very back and forth, collaborative, quite frankly, in almost its truest form. Where, knock on wood, I mean, we've never got to a point where we're like, well, someone's got to make a call because I want to go this way and you want to go that way. It seems to work, gel quite well. In terms of lanes, I would say, when it comes to like the artwork, like game, like overall, like this design of the elements, that's my lane, right? Because that's my area of expertise, and I do a lot of that in my day job. So often what we'll do is when we have concepts that we'll do on paper. Sorry, go ahead, Ed. Were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, I as Jake calls me a lot of the time, is I'm an ideas guy, where I'll come up with a lot of really the ideas, or hey, we should take the artwork in a certain direction, maybe like let's make it a little lighter, a little funner, and then he comes up with these crazy ideas, as you can see behind him, with the nutty squirrels and the hamsters versus hippos, and then he'll show me the artwork and be like, all right, what do you think about that? And I'm like, that's a cool idea. Why don't we, or how about we tweak it by adding this, or and then he'll come back to it later on with something else. And it kind of works really well, I find, that way.
We're very visual guys, right? So I think that like pen and paper, I mean, if you look at Dirty Dragsters, we did like pen and paper. Nutty Squirrels was literally taking cards from the dollar store and cutting them in half into making into mini cards, and literally the marker at the kitchen table just writing on them, right? Just trying to get the ideas down as much as we could. That works really, really well between the two of us. But then, I'll take that because I need to then see it in a cleaner form before I can fully kind of get my head around, okay, is this a game or not, right? So I'll usually go away and do that really quick. Sometimes I'll surprise Adam where like his wife will say, does your brother ever sleep? Like, where do you have time to do
My
this
wife
stuff?
says that quite often. I'll be getting a message at like 12 o'clock midnight and my phone just starts going off crazy.
What do you think of this? What do you think of that?
What do you think about this? And I've got a full game with all the artwork attached to it. And even like, my wife will look at me and go, but does your brother not sleep? Where does he have time to do all of this?
And I think it's inspired thought, right? And I'm sure you guys feel the same way as when you hone in on something and the creative juices are flowing, you got to get it out. You can't just say, I'll park that and come back to it in a couple of days. I mean, I got to get it out. If I don't get it out, I'm afraid I'm going to lose it, right? So, but it's fun. And time passes very, very quickly. And you don't even realize it. I'm sure you realize as Randall when you're doing the writing, Mike when you're sketching at the table maybe with the kids and going through some concepts. I'm sure you feel the same way, right? Like when the inspiration hits, you gotta kind of move, right?
Yeah, I feel like when inspiration hits, it's almost like things start writing themselves, and you gotta be there to catch it all and keep up with it. And when those, so you've got to be able to sit down and do that, even if you stay up till 4 a.m,
Yeah.
doing it and you feel miserable the next day. I feel you on that.
Yeah. Would you agree, Mike?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. It's cool when those moments happen. And especially when, like Randall, we haven't lived in the same city for several decades now. And to have this project that we can work on gives us another opportunity to have memories, to do something together, even though we're miles apart. And that's kind of the whole theme of this episode is how do we bring families together? And the hope is for us to create a game that people can have those shared memories at the table. And in the process, we're having fun memories along the way. Even if we waste an hour and a half or 2 hours on a mechanic that doesn't work or a story that doesn't completely flow.
So, I've got a garbage bin of artwork that never went anywhere, but it was it seemed like a good idea at the time. Until you play it and you're like, yeah, it sucks. That was a waste of time, but at least I got it right. So
but at least I got to hang out with my brother. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly it. I mean, Adam and I are thankfully in neighboring cities. Like we're, from my office, he's 15 minutes from my office. So, we make it a point of trying to, connect at least every couple of weeks, right, in person to go through things, which helps as well. So with your game, this Gadgets game, like how are your timelines looking? Like when is this going to be ready? Is this something that's like a 2023 project? Is it this year? Like where are you guys at with that?
I'll let Randall answer that. He knows better than I do. Just kidding. Yeah, so there's not really a rush. We'll probably take it around to conventions this summer. As the artwork, it's going to be a very art heavy game. We've got lots of maps, lots of cards. And with the multiple maps comes different things that we have to play test. We're not play testing the same board each time. We're playing each different map. And so it'll take some time to balance. And so maybe 2023, like spring of 2023, maybe fall of 2023. We're not quite sure, but
so it's one of those that's ready when it's ready kind of things?
Yep. And what about your project?
Our project. So we've got, right now, we've got 2 titles that are pretty much done. One is Dirty Dragsters. That was mentioned in our last Kickstarter with the Minton game. That's literally a game that Ab and I came up with while we were working on another game. As a side thought, this happens all the time. We're working on a game and we're like, it'd be kind of cool. And then bang, we're working on another game. We're like, we got to go back and work on the game we were just working on. So that one is starting to arrive. It's actually straight to retail. So production's done. It's in the States. Now it's arriving here in Canada in the next week and a half. Late because of the global shipping issues, unfortunately. Planting Evidence, the card game, is available on GameCrafter right now. That game we're looking to come out with in this upcoming quarter, hopefully March. I'd like to run a campaign on that. Along with the second edition of Tanks But No Thanks. The one that we've really got our teeth sunk into the most right now, we're codenaming Cities. And it's kind of like a worker placement, engine building game kind of combination. And that one is kind of like you guys, is one we're picking away at. We're very excited about it. Mechanically, I think we got it 90%, 95% the way there. We're still fleshing it out a bit, but we see it as kind of the first time we're going to work on something that we hope will be a franchise, right? So the world that we're creating can be franchised off and have spin-off of different game mechanics and different types of games that all fall within that same universe. So if somebody wants to kind of play in that universe one night, they can play 3 or 4 different types of games that all kind of in that same theme. So it's an idea we've been working on for some time now, and but I don't want to rush it, right? It's one of those things that we feel it's good enough that we want to come out when we're ready. So best case scenario, maybe the fall of 2022. It may be ready to launch on Kickstarter. But again, it could even go into 2023. Again, I got to make sure it's right. And but it's feeling pretty damn good at this point, Adam?
I think so.
Yeah,
like you said, it's and like you were saying too, Mike and Randall, it's not. I think when you're designing a game, it's not something you want to rush. You want to make sure it's all hammered in, like everything's nice and smooth. That way, when people are playing it, like we've been saying, you want them to enjoy it when they play it. Even if they're play testing, you want to see the enjoyment of those other people while they're playing it, and they're like, okay, this wasn't a waste of time type of feel. So no rush, and it'll get done when it gets done. And
we'll keep it going.
Cool. Exactly. Now, will there be any rodents in this cities game? You have hamsters and you have nutty squirrels.
You know what?
Gotta have a rodent in there, right?
Yeah, the genre. We're moving away from the caricature-based genre on this one. This one will be a little more of a medium weight game. Cool. But it's cool. It's been a fun journey, and you know, I think of publishing games, developing games, designing. It's been awesome being part of this industry, and I think the podcast itself has been awesome. And you know, I think this 150 episodes is just really gone by in the blink of an eye. Like, to think, you know, in that, I know we've had some repeat guests and stuff, but there's over 100 people that we've talked to and interviewed, and we haven't even put a dent in the number of people that are actually in this industry, right? So there's so many more guests that are yet to come. I know starting next week, we've got some more interesting guests coming up, so stay tuned for that. Mike, man, it's been awesome. I hope, I can't wait to see who the next person is you line up. You keep surprising me with some of these guests, so keep them coming, buddy. I know we're renting tax season, but if you can squeeze in some time for some guests in this quarter, I'm looking forward to see what you come up with. I want to wish you guys all the best in 2022, all the best with gadgets, and I'll be following along your social channels, and I'll keep watching.
Congratulations,
likewise,
guys.
You guys take care. Cheers.
Yep.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.